let's get this done, right? And I'm like, awesome. We hit the ground running. We find great people. And for whatever reason, there's a lag time. A lot of times with good candidates, you're going to lose them. They're nails on a chalkboard when I find these errors. And I'm like, how does nobody, they're like, no one's ever told me this. An interview is in essence almost an initial assessment in which we would do in a therapy session almost.
Welcome to The Growth Switch, the podcast where we dive into the strategies, struggles, and breakthroughs of bold business leaders. I'm your host, Jules Fox, growth strategist and lead content creator at Ariel Media, and I'm here to uncover how today's top brands are scaling, overcoming challenges, and unlocking sustainable success. Now, for those of you just tuning in, Ariel Media helps grow successful brands with comprehensive hands-on support for sales, business development, and performance marketing. Go ahead and drop growth into the comments if you want to learn how to do that. We're joined by Ariel Schur, LCSW, and the CEO of ABS Staffing Solutions, a powerhouse in relationship-driven recruiting. She's spent over a decade helping businesses grow by placing the right people in the right roles and fast. Ariel, thank you so much for joining the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for aging me as well.
Oh yeah, so happy to have you on. So tell me a little bit more about ABS. I'm so interested in how you came up with this idea and found your niche in the market.
Yeah, definitely. So candidly, this was never part of my game plan. I was a psychology major. I always enjoyed working with people and helping people, but I was looking at it from more of a clinical vantage point. I actually started and had a private practice in psychotherapy. And I ended up wanting to do something to supplement my private practice initially. And I went to a recruiting agency many years ago. And while I was in the waiting room, and I was thinking I was just wanted to maybe do something part-time just to supplement private practice because it can be isolating, and just wanted to kind of fill in some gaps. And I was in the waiting room, and the owner at the time of the company came up to me and said, what are you doing here? And I was like, well, obviously looking for a job. Why else would I be in your waiting room? And he asked to look at my resume, and he said, will you come to the conference room? And I said, sure. We went in, and he started to ask me questions, and actually on the spot said, I want you to work here. And I was totally taken off guard, and I had no idea what that entailed or meant on any level. And he explained he needed somebody with my kind of psych background, and at that time for his organization to kind of forge relationships with not-for-profits and people in the mental health field, and felt my background would be a good synergy. And he said, I need to fill this immediately. So if you can let me know by the end of the week. And I left there and, overwhelmed, excited. I called one of my best friends from high school, who was actually a recruiter, to obtain her opinion. And she was like, oh my God, go for it. Why not? You have nothing to lose. You love working with people and talking to people. You can still do your private practice, and, there's really no downside. So I heeded her advice, and candidly, financially, it seemed like a good move. And I started having no idea what I was walking into. Very scary and very different from anything I had ever done. But with time, I just loved it. And I loved, interfacing with all different people and helping people and getting to know people and forging relationships. And I decided to go off on my own, having truly no idea what I was in for. I'd been getting offers from other companies, and I kept thinking, if I'm going to have to rebuild, I might as well do it for myself. And I had a few people at my old firm that wanted to come with me. So I rented a WeWork space, and I set up shop, so to speak, and formed an LLC and hit the ground running. And it just started rolling out from there. And I really didn't want to pigeonhole myself into one sector when I started. So I really felt that as long as I understood what a company was looking for, the same principles applied in terms of, filling the job. The only kind of caveat to that is things within the IT space are a little more, they have their own jargon and language, and that's something that I didn't really feel comfortable in. But outside of that, I loved learning about different businesses and different jobs, and really cultivating those relationships with my clients and getting to know them, and building that ongoing relationship and rapport and trust has been a huge kind of foundation to my business.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that having that really interesting and unique background in psychology has probably helped you connect with people.
Yes,
Yeah, so tell
100%.
me more about how those people connections help in the business that you do now.
Well, there's a lot of parallels, right? And there's a lot of intrinsic overlap and just understanding people, relating to people, being able to, an interview is in essence almost an initial assessment in which we would do in a therapy session almost. So really having those tools and understanding of humans has been, a huge value add for me. And just understanding human nature. And there's always outliers and there's always things that still kind of surprised me. But overall, it's been really, really helpful in terms of having an understanding of the mind and people in general.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Now, blend that with the human approach with how do you fulfill the thing that people need? How do you find the person, the company who best needs your services and you can align those two things together? What's your strategy to do that?
So, candidly, I've been very fortunate, and the majority of my clients and business that has come to me has truly happened organically, whether it's referrals or people going on my website and reaching out. I have never, since I started, made one cold call. Every business that has presented itself has happened truly organically. I feel very fortunate for that. You know, again, I pride myself on really quality over quantity. And,
Mm.
people have positive experiences and share that. And that often leads to other referrals. And whether it's with candidates or clients, that's really been kind of how things have transpired for me. So, I like often a lot of clients who are also a startup will reach out to me, and that's fun because I can identify what that entails and what that's like. And so I think that's often helpful too. And the more I kind of understand the people in the company, the easier it is to then relay that to potential candidates and find the right person. And the more information my clients are able to share. And I always say when I'm first working with someone, this is a relationship. And like any relationship, communication and trust is a vital component. And for them to know that, and I'm not human resources, when they talk to me, they can be very open and straightforward pertaining to what they're looking for. Because the more information I have at my disposal, the better I can do with my job for them.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like, you're able to solve the people problem, but you also have like forward thinking problems as well. You're able to help companies solve a deeper problem as well. Maybe explore some of the ideal client relationships that you have and what is it that you're able to support them with beyond simply hiring?
There's a multitude. I've had clients who, are starting out and will come to me for also just general business insight and how I've done things. And I love helping people in general. So that's always fun. And as well as, with candidates, or a lot of people will refer their friends or people that don't have a job. And that was happening a lot. And while I'm grateful for any referral, that candidly, there's a lot of people that are looking for jobs, so that doesn't necessarily help me. But what we have done and pivoted into recently, because there was such an influx of that, and I wanted to help people, but it needed to make sense from a financial standpoint.
Yeah.
And I don't always have all those jobs that people are looking for. So we created another kind of subset of my business to do sort of coaching and helping individual candidates who, are looking for work, whether they're new grads or rejoining the workforce or laid off, have different sort of packages that we help them, whether it's, resume building, interview skills, or soup to nuts in their LinkedIn, and just, the whole package. Because this is what I do and my recruiters for so long, things that seem commonplace to me and basic knowledge. I've come to realize a lot of people are like, oh, I didn't know that. And, everything from helping them to pick out outfits, to having the right questions to ask, to practicing, even just doing mock interviews. And a lot of first round interviews are, Zoom. So making sure, that let's do a practice Zoom. Let's make sure the camera's set. Let's make sure all of the technologies are in place and make sure you feel and present the best version of yourself, because confidence is such a big component to everything as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Confidence and that knowledge. It sounds like, you have this deep wisdom from working in the field. You know what people are looking for. So you're very qualified to be able to train those right people. And do you sometimes take those trainees, the people that you've helped to coach to become, better applicants? Do you sometimes take them and plug them into the right slots?
Of course. I mean, that's, listen, that's always the objective and ideal. But regardless, I want their experience with my company to be a value add, right? So I always tell my recruiters, and it's always astounding to me how many candidates have worked with other firms and they'll have these resumes, and I'm confused how I'm like, has no one told you that, whether it's basic things like the tenses are wrong. I'm like, if you're no longer working there, it should be in the past tense, not present.
Mm-hmm.
And things need to be in alignment. And if you're using bullet points, and you know, you're not having periods and little things that, for me, I look at them and they pop out, and I'm like, they're nails on a chalkboard when I find these errors. And I'm like, how did nobody, they're like, no one's ever told me this. And it's always astounding to me. But
Yeah.
and now even with AI, people think, oh, I just put it in and they gave me a resume. But even that, like, there's things that aren't foolproof. And it's always good to have more than one person look at a resume. And yes, there can be many versions too. And that's something I often relay to candidates. And whenever we're sending them for a specific job, I always say, okay, we want to make sure, and especially if you're just doing it blindly, you want to make sure that you are incorporating the points and the skills that this specific job is seeking, and make it very apparent. Because if an AI tool is just going through a resume, if they don't see those keywords, you're going to get skipped over,
Yeah.
and you really want to tailor a resume for a specific job and make sure you highlight those skills that are relevant.
Yeah. And, hiring and working with people is very much like relationship building. There is a human relationship element to it. And we're often looking for these deal breakers in human relationships. Is this a thing that is not going to work? So I think what you're speaking to are these little deal breakers. If you don't even know how to fill out the resume properly and apply properly, how can I trust that you're going to do your job properly? And you may have already been disqualified for putting those periods at the end of a bullet point, unfortunately,
Yeah. Or like things aren't in alignment. And I love how they'll have like detailed oriented. And I'm like, you're detailed oriented, but your resume is, you clearly didn't take those details and look at them and apply that to your resume. And so, that's kind of the first picture that somebody sees of you, and you want it to be the best picture possible. You're not going to want to submit a photo where your eyes are shut, right? You want to make sure you look your best and you're smiling and the filter is good and whatever else. And the same yields true with a resume.
Yeah. So, what's a major mistake that you see that companies repeatedly make when they're doing their?
So I think it's a few things. One, when there's a major lapse, when they come to me, let's say, and we need to hire someone and let's get this done, right? And I'm like, awesome, we hit the ground running, we find great people. And for whatever reason, there's a lag time on their end, let's say. And whether it's someone's going on vacation and can't interview, or they can't maintain that momentum, a lot of times with good candidates, you're going to lose them. And it's so important to, one, be able to communicate. If let's say, you're not going to be able to keep that momentum for the interview process, to make that known from the onset, right? Or to block that time so that you can keep that, it's a two-way street. You want them to be interested and they want to be interested, and they want to feel like this person cares and is taking the time. And, when there's a big lag time, we'll often lose a lot of solid candidates. And it's unfortunate, and it happens way too often.
Yeah. So going forward, like in the somewhat tricky market that we have, how are you envisioning being able to further help people who need to make the absolute most of these hires? Get the most, return on their investment in hiring a new employee for their company.
I mean, again, we're dealing with people, right? So there's no guarantees. And I think that's one of the hardest pieces of my job, right? We're selling something, but it's not like a hard product, where I can guarantee and do everything in my power and know that it's, as long as I've checked every box and done everything and done my due diligence, that it will be in good shape. In this case, I'm dealing with humans. And so I try to, one, set up as many kind of initial quote unquote tests or ways to ensure that whoever I am presenting as a candidate, meet certain benchmarks, and whether it's, hard skills or soft skills, and just doing even little things where like my first recruiter will talk to them and I'll say, okay, great. If you like them, have them reach out to me, send an email. I'll have them send me a calendar invite, make sure they send it to me, make sure it's on time, make sure they are there on time for the set call. All of these little things are key. And if somebody misses that mark, that's a big red flag to me, unless they've alerted me in advance I'm running late, or, and obviously there's outliers, but for the most part, those things are very important. And in terms of, I always feel that it's helpful to, before somebody commits to a job or vice versa, that, have them come in for a few hours, make sure, because you can describe a job and you can interview, but really seeing things firsthand in action can really add insight, and seeing how that individual is in person for a few hours, right? And you can compensate them for their time, but I think it's really valuable. It's something I've always done, is to, I can describe this job till I'm blue in the face, and I try to always be as candid as possible with the good and the bad. But until someone's in it, you don't really know. And so I think the more insight on both fronts, a person, whether it's the candidate or the employer, having that is really helpful, and make sure to ensure that it is the right fit.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Now, you do a lot of work in helping other companies grow by getting them the right candidates and helping them build up their revenue. How do you envision your own company growing for the future? If you were to want to double or even 5x or even 10x your revenue over the next few years, what are some strategies that you would use? Because what I hear you say is that, you have really great organic outreach from referrals and word of mouth, which is absolutely fantastic. But do you have any strategies in the works, since this is a growth channel, of how you would like to grow your company?
So I am writing a book. I do enjoy doing podcasts or doing things in the media outlets. And I think that gets the word out of pertaining to my organization. And so that brings in business. I also think, like I said, we just started the subset of doing kind of more of the coaching and things with candidates, is another stream of revenue. The other thing is, with new clients that I learned is, I used to do a lot of non-retained searches, or without taking any sort of retainer. And that, initially I was happy to get any business, right? But now that I'm more established, I'm not giving away my time for free, right? And a lot of times, I need to know that the client's invested into. So I've really gone to switching my model of doing more, my preference is a retained search initially, and getting an upfront retainer. And this way we both have some skin in the game, so to speak.
Hmm. Yeah,
But
that makes sense. I think that's a great idea.
so that's, one thing. And I used to do some temp to hire stuff. And I really, that's fun because it's a lot quicker and instant gratification. The risk with that is, I've learned, just more than I care to deal with. And you're dealing with a different caliber of a candidate. And it's just something I'm not that interested in doing at this juncture anymore.
Yeah, that's such a polite way of saying that, because I know exactly what you're talking about. So, would you we've had some really great authors on the podcast. Would you like to tell me more about the book, or is that still under wraps?
Yeah, no. It's basically drawing upon the parallels of dating and interviewing. And I often have used that analogy for people because I think it's helpful to frame it in that way, because most people, by the time they're interviewing for jobs, have gone on a date, right? And sometimes the initial, whether it is a first date or rejoining the workforce, and whether it's someone who has been married and that's their first time going on a date, and kind of looking at it from that lens, I find is really helpful for people. Even your LinkedIn is kind of the equivalent of, like, if you're on a dating site, right? And making sure that, again, you're presenting your best, both image externally in terms of the photo that you pick, as well as the information you choose, and making it sure it represents you in the best light, and kind of demystifying that whole process and breaking it down and looking at it from kind of another lens, I find is often helpful and relatable for people. So
Yeah.
just kind of sharing that perspective and helping people, move through that process, whether it's dating or interviewing.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful way of putting it. Because we are attracting people on a subconscious, conscious level everywhere we are, from a job to everything, and you want to attract the right people, and
Exactly.
so it's not just about becoming attractive to people. It's about becoming attractive to the right person who is going to.
Yeah. And knowing, understanding what that looks like and really, doing your proper due diligence and, making sure that you have all that information because, you want that job to be someplace you're excited to go to, and, make sure that it does align with what you're seeking. And if you look at people that work there, they inspire you and it's like, that's a trajectory I would want to follow, or I hope in 5 years I could be in that role.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. And I think there's nowadays people kind of flip flop too quickly. There's something nice about being somewhere and having some roots, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes a ton of sense. Ariel, it's been fantastic having you on the Growth Switch podcast. Really insightful. Really appreciate your time. And thank you so much for joining us.
First, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.